Thank you. I'm here to talk about housing, affordable housing. I think I'll start off by telling you the obvious, in that at a business sense, investments in housing are critical because it leads to positive outcomes for our society, our city as a whole. Lower health costs, better education outcomes, stronger neighborhoods. So right off the bat, it is an investment that will help reduce costs in other areas. Homeownership alternatives finances affordable housing developments. We make decisions based on a business pro forma and without the use of city operating or capital grants to build that housing. We have been successful. Our small staff of 5 have developed and financed over 2,000 units of housing in Toronto. I think that compares very well to any other organization. I bring that up because it ties directly to the recommendations around the Affordable Housing Office, which is another very small entity that's innovative. It moves barriers out of the way for developers such as myself, private developers, nonprofit developers, other agencies who are looking to move forward on affordable housing. I think there's 5 things I want to touch on in the KPMG report. One is that it did not acknowledge that innovation and the value, the immeasurable value that that office provides to developers like us in getting approvals done and getting projects through the often difficult processes at the city. Number 2, it did not identify clearly as a core service housing at the city level, and this was a mistake. After 20 years of downloading at both the federal and provincial level, a recent long-term affordable housing strategy from the province that said cities will deliver these services, and a service delivery agreement that was done recently between the City of Toronto and the province just 2 years ago that's uploaded some services and not others. It's clear that we may not all like it, but housing is a responsibility that the city has. We may go back and ask for changes in the future, but right now we have to deal with that. Number 3, the report did not identify the upcoming AHP funding. Roughly $90 million will be made available to Toronto for the next 3 years from the federal and provincial governments. You need somebody who can deliver that, and the Affordable Housing Office, which is quite small, will do that. Number 4, my understanding is that the budget for that office only gets 1/3 of its funds from city operating revenues, and the other 2/3 comes from the HP and other levels of government. Clearly, disbanding or reducing that will not save any dollars. And number 5, merging that service with the Social Housing Office, just because they both have housing in the title, is kind of like me going and saying, hey, construction site manager, why don't you run the sales office? It just doesn't make any sense. They do 2 completely different things and really should be separate and run separately as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Councillor Davis is first. 2 minutes.
First, thank you for your very concise and informative submission. So if we were to cut this office, could you be clear about what you think the impacts might be, considering that KPMG did not look at that?
I'll give you a real-world example. We recently did a project in the Junction area, Kill and Dundas. We were able to work with this office to supplement the support we're providing families, and the average income of the families there was about $60,000 a year of the purchasers, to help get even lower income families to buy. And when you look at the average of the families who were able to get some extra support, and these are all loans from the city or from the province that are secured and guaranteed by HOA's own funds, so very secure and will return to you, the income dropped down to about, I think, $47,000 or $48,000, and there were many families below that. Those families would not have been able to afford to buy a home. They would continue to be on, I guess, a rental treadmill and not be building family equity and a basis for future growth.
And I was very pleased you mentioned the new provincial long-term housing strategy and the new Act. The Act does require municipalities to have this role. It also requires municipalities to submit a 10-year plan. Isn't it the case that we have a 10-year plan with very clear targets for developing new affordable housing, which is exactly what we're supposed to be doing?
Yes. I can't speak to the specifics of the city's plan. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vaughan, next.
I'd just like to get your thoughts on the notion that rent supplements is the preferred option for housing people, and why your organization doesn't pursue rental housing and instead pursues low-income home ownership.
We have a very specific model where we defer the profit out of the developments that we finance in a second mortgage that allows families with lower incomes to purchase homes. So that is not transferable to the rental side, and that's our core business, and that's what we're doing, and I think doing very successfully in housing families at incomes who otherwise couldn't buy and would need additional support. Rent supplements were tried by the province in a pilot project under the HP about 4 or 5 years ago, and there was a pilot with the city, and it didn't get a lot of take-up, partly because there wasn't a permanent commitment to fund those supplements. So my understanding is landlord said, well, listen, if you give me a commitment of 3 years or 5 years, which is probably what you could do with the HP dollars, the landlords don't want to take that subsidy because in 3 or 5 years they're going to have to turn around to those tenants and go, oh, we don't have money coming in the door to to pay for your share of that rent. You're out, and they don't want to deal with the evictions and all that process. So the uptake wasn't great. I don't think it's going to give you a long-term solution, and I'm not convinced that it's a wise investment of the dollars when you have other ways of housing families more effectively and in a more long-term fashion.
And in terms of your program, does the affordability component, is that rolled over and protected moving forward, or is it just for the first buyer and then it's all bets are off?
So I'll give, there's two answers. One is with our fund, we are dedicated to reinvest all of our funds and any increase in equity value into future developments. And we every year have increased the number of families we support, so that's protected. The second piece is the actual units resell on the market, and those units turn over in the normal stock. Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to cut you off.
So Councillor Davis touched upon the 10-year plan. I'm one of the authors of that plan, as you know, and still believe in the 10-year plan. And I think that we've put in there the tools needed to be able to do what we need to do as a city. But the plan also talks about the recognition that we can't unless the federal provincial government comes to the table. And KPMG very clearly spelled that out today when there was a question of them with respect to just that. What is it that you mean? And they said that you can continue basically what you're doing, but you can't if you don't have the money. And so without the federal or provincial government coming to the table, you can't do it at a city level. Are you here suggesting that we can? I don't think you are.
Well, certainly, my understanding is tomorrow the federal and provincial governments are announcing the extension for Ontario of the HP, and that'll be $90 million over the next 3 years for the City of Toronto. And they do provide administrative costs, I'm not sure within the 90 or above, but that is there. Would it be nice to have a full 10-year plan and more money? For sure. You and I think it's the Affordable Housing Office who has the wherewithal to really look at how do you use that money in the smartest way possible and get the most bang for the dollar. And there's a lot of competing demands. Homeless shelters, there's a dire need for more rental units. I would argue there's a very effective way of building more affordable ownership.
And the city doing it on its own is the question.
Well, I guess I'm saying the province and feds are there to put up 3 years worth of funding, and whether they can do it on their own in the future is really up to the city. I was around when the City of Toronto Act was passed and provided some new revenue tools for the city that could or could not be pursued. It's a decision of council and the voters that could give you opportunities there.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much.